In the history of professional sports, almost every athlete plays with a desperate need to be loved. Michael Jordan wanted to be worshipped like a god, Magic Johnson wanted to be the life of the party, and Kobe Bryant wanted to be respected as the ultimate warrior. But Reggie Miller was different because he was built from a darker material. Reggie Miller didn't want your applause, and he certainly didn't want your respect, he wanted your hatred. He wanted to walk into an arena of 20,000 screaming fans and single-handedly turn their cheers into a terrified silence. For an entire decade, one man held the psychological keys to the biggest city in the world, treating New York not as a basketball court, but as his personal playground of torture. This isn't just a story about basketball or playoff series, this is the story of a skinny, trash-talking sociopath who looked the New York Knicks in the eye and broke their spirit. This is the story of the greatest villain the NBA has ever seen. To truly understand the gravity of what Reggie Miller accomplished, you first have to understand the environment he was walking into, because the 1990s New York Knicks were not just a basketball team, they were a gang. Led by the imposing Patrick Ewing and orchestrated by the mafia-style demeanor of head coach Pat Riley, the Knicks turned Madison Square Garden, the mecca of basketball, into a fortress of intimidation. They played a brand of physical, bruising defense that bordered on assault, with enforcers like Charles Oakley and Anthony Mason ensuring that anyone who drove into the paint would pay a physical price. Opposing teams were supposed to be scared, they were supposed to crumble under the bright lights of Broadway and the suffocating pressure of the New York media machine. The Knicks were the bullies of the Eastern Conference, a team designed to beat you up first and outscore you second. Into this coliseum stepped Reggie Miller, a man who looked like he didn't belong in the same league, let alone on the same court. He was incredibly skinny, frail-looking, and lacked the muscular build of his contemporaries, but he possessed a weapon far more dangerous than physical strength, his mouth. Reggie engaged in a level of psychological warfare that the league had rarely seen, talking relentlessly about opponents' insecurities, their families, and their contracts. While the Knicks tried to intimidate him with elbows and hard fouls, Reggie responded with a smile and a barrage of three-pointers that seemed to defy physics. He thrived on negative energy, feeding off the hostility of the crowd like a vampire, and nowhere was the energy more hostile than in New York City, setting the stage for a collision course that would change NBA history. The rivalry officially transcended sports and entered the realm of pop culture theater during the 1994 Eastern Conference Finals, specifically in Game 5. The atmosphere inside the Garden was electric, fueled by the antics of the Knicks' most famous fan, director Spike Lee, who was sitting courtside and making the fatal mistake of engaging Reggie Miller in a shouting match. For the first 3 quarters, the Knicks were in total control, bullying the Pacers and dominating the flow of the game, while Spike Lee danced on the sidelines, taunting Reggie with every missed shot. But then, something snapped in Miller's psyche. It wasn't just that he got hot, he went absolutely supernova, scoring 25 points in the fourth quarter alone in one of the most devastating displays of offensive clutch shooting ever recorded. With every deep three-pointer that splashed through the net, Reggie would turn and stare directly at Spike Lee, transforming the game from a team sport into a personal duel. The climax came after a dagger three-pointer that sealed the Pacers' comeback. Reggie turned to the stunned filmmaker, wrapped both hands around his own neck, and made the infamous choke sign. It was a gesture that silenced 19,000 people instantly, a moment of supreme disrespect that was broadcast to millions of homes around the world. In that split second, Reggie wasn't just taunting a fan, he was telling the entire city of New York, the Knicks players, and the global media that they didn't have the heart to finish the job. The Pacers won the game, but Reggie had won something more significant. He had officially transitioned from being just a talented opponent to becoming a mythical nemesis, the Knick Killer who lived in the nightmares of New Yorkers. If 1994 was the insult that started the war, 1995 was the miracle that ended the debate, delivering a moment so improbable that if you wrote it in a movie script, Hollywood producers would reject it for being unrealistic. It was Game 1 of the Eastern Conference semifinals, and the Knicks were up by 6 points with only 18.7 seconds left on the clock. In the mathematical reality of the NBA, the game is over in that situation. Fans were already heading to the exits to beat the Manhattan traffic, convinced that their team had secured the victory. But Reggie Miller defied mathematics and logic in a sequence that remains the most shocking display of theft in playoff history. He came off a screen, caught the pass, and drilled a three-pointer to cut the lead to 3, but that was just the beginning of the chaos. Instead of retreating to play defense, Reggie instinctively shoved Greg Anthony to the floor, intercepted the inbound pass right under the basket, stepped back behind the three-point line, and without hesitation, buried another three-pointer to tie the game. In the span of 3.1 seconds, he had erased a 6-point lead and completely sucked the air out of the building. The panic on the faces of the Knicks players was visible. They were witnessing a ghost story unfold in real time. But Reggie wasn't done twisting the knife. After the shell-shocked Knicks missed 2 crucial free throws on the other end, Reggie grabbed the rebound, drew a foul, and calmly walked to the line to sink 2 free throws that won the game. 8 points in 9 seconds. It was a heist. Reggie Miller had walked into the fortress of Madison Square Garden and stolen the soul of the city in less time than it takes to tie your shoes, leaving a scar on the franchise that would last for decades. The rivalry continued for years, filled with headbutts, technical fouls, and bitter words in the press, but looking back through the lens of history, we realize that Reggie Miller needed the Knicks just as much as the Knicks needed him. Every great hero needs a compelling villain, and every villain needs a grand stage. New York provided the brightest stage in the world, and Reggie provided the Shakespearean drama. He embraced the role of the bad guy with a sinister joy that is completely absent in modern sports, where players are often friends who work out together in the summer. Reggie Miller and the Knicks had genuine, authentic animosity, a pure competitive hatred that drove both sides to their absolute limits and created some of the most memorable television in the history of the league. When Reggie Miller finally retired, he walked off the court at Madison Square Garden one last time, and something incredible happened that perfectly summarized this complex relationship. The same crowd that had booed him, cursed him, and genuinely hated him for 15 years stood up and began to cheer, chanting his name in a deafening roar. It was the ultimate sign of respect from the toughest fans in the world. They hated him, yes, but they respected the fact that he never backed down, never crumbled under the pressure, and always delivered his best when the lights were brightest. He was the only man who could look the Knicks in the eye, tell them exactly how he was going to destroy them, and then actually do it. In the rich history of NBA rivalries, there is nothing quite like the skinny kid from Indiana taking on the biggest city in the world and winning.